Hi, this is Matt Roszak, here with Sam Bankman-Fried from FTX, and we're going to talk about what's on the horizon in crypto, and so what's happening on the next 12 to 24 months in this rapidly evolving space where the ground seems to shift underneath our feet every single day, which I think is part of the excitement of it. Let's do some brief introduction, Sam. So why don't you kick us off? Give us maybe your kind of personal story and some background on yourself.
Yeah, so I'm Sam Bankman-Fried, the co-founder and CEO of FTX. I went to MIT, went to Wall Street for 3.5 years after that. Worked at Jane Street Capital trading international ETFs and really loved it there. Left in 2017 and got into crypto. I started up a crypto trading firm, Alameda Research. And after about a year of that, it became clear that the infrastructure in the space was not able to support the demand and volume that it was seeing. And crypto exchanges are just a really core piece of that infrastructure. And so late 2018, started building out a crypto exchange. Launched it spring of 2019. It's called FTX. And have been growing it out ever since. It's now, something like the third or fourth biggest exchange globally.
What's interesting is back in the day when I first met you in Singapore, CZ, the CEO of Binance, this is when you were still in the Alameda days and trying to form kind of your next phase. He simply said, you got to watch this guy, Sam. He's doing the most interesting things in crypto. And I think since then, that has held true. So pretty amazing. And just quickly, my background. So I've been in technology and venture my entire career. Started with investing in the early internet and then the cloud business, and got into crypto while I was chairman of a social gaming company in Singapore. And you quickly learn in social gaming, payment processing and payments becomes a core competency. And so we're thinking about gaming credits and exchanges of those gaming credits. And that led to somebody saying, well, there's this thing called Bitcoin out there. And then I started forgetting about gaming credits for the moment and kind of focus exclusively on Bitcoin, and then started investing in the space in kind of 2013 timeframe, mostly as an education to see like where this space was going, where the white spaces were forming. And through my firm, Tally Capital, made about 90 investments in the ecosystem, which led me to meet some of the best developers in the space. So Vitalik before Ethereum, including my co-founder, Jeff Garzik, who's my co-founder at Bloq, which is the operating company that we're building every day. And so that was... the investing to operating was, I think, a great kind of evolution for me, because I think building in this space is the best way to create value and create an impact. And on top of that, I also serve as chairman of the Chamber of Digital Commerce, and so advocacy and regulatory matters. Despite kind of being an investor and builder in this space specifically, there's things there that we need to pay attention to and help shape and evolve as we move forward. So great to be in this fireside chat with you, Sam. So before we go into kind of the longer term kind of horizon of what's happening now and what's happening around the corner, let's talk about the current state of crypto. There's been a lot going on lately. And so I saw you in Miami, which was a pretty incredible gathering of Bitcoiners, of crypto people. Tens of thousands of people showed up. I think, a lot of the pandemic related stuff had a lot of pent up demand. But it was great to see. Before the conference started, the conference organizer, David Bailey of BTC Media, was like, I don't know how many people are going to show up, but I don't want it to turn into Fire Festival, people sitting on the curb with no water, whatever. It was definitely not that. It was pretty amazing on the kind of art side, on the thought leaders, and kind of the speakers were just amazing. What were your impressions of Miami?
Yeah, it was. I mean, it's really great. And a lot of it was just like so much has happened in the space in the last year and a half. But people haven't seen each other because of COVID. And so it was really great just to be able to see people, be able to meet a lot of counterparties, even some employees. who I hadn't seen before or hadn't seen in a long time. And I think it was great for a lot of people. I think that maybe that sort of outstripped the conference itself a bit, but it was a really great gathering for the industry.
Totally. And some interesting things that came out of it. El Salvador said that they're going to adopt Bitcoin as legal tender, right? And so we have 195 countries out there, and here's El Salvador coming on the scene. Historically it was like, get crypto if you're an individual, get crypto on your balance sheet if you're a company, i.e. MicroStrategy. And here it's a country. And so there's this interesting dynamic. It's Carlson's law, where innovation going from kind of bottom up is chaotic yet smart, but innovation going from top down is organized yet dumb. And so this kind of going from the bottom up is kind of an interesting ascension for Bitcoin and kind of crypto adoption. What did you think of the El Salvador announcement?
Yeah, I completely agree. And I mean, it was really cool. We'll see what actually happens from it. But I do think that it's that it sort of breaks the ice a little bit. And certainly makes it a little bit easier for others to follow suit. And so, excited to see that happen. And I think in general, we've seen a pretty big shift from institutions over the last year, from basically saying that they were not going to touch crypto to saying that they were going to somehow, although the details haven't been fleshed out yet. And I think this is sort of another step in that direction.
Yeah, and I think it's an interesting comment about, institutions getting into crypto. And I think, what MicroStrategy, Square, PayPal, and others have done in terms of putting Bitcoin on a balance sheet has inspired others. But it takes time for big, publicly traded, regulated institutions to adopt it. They have to think through, board approval, compliance, regulatory, custody, all these things. So when they say, let's do this, it sometimes will take them 3 to 6 months or longer to actually do it, because it's kind of a new muscle group that they're working on. So I think we'll see more of that crescendo happening towards the back end of this year. And then the other topic in Miami at the crypto conference was Elon Musk and his comments and sentiments that kind of impacted the price of Bitcoin, and a lot of philosophies around, is Bitcoin green, and the whole ESG movement. What I thought was interesting is looking at the data. I know we've seen everything from 50% to 76% where Bitcoin's mining is green, comes from renewable sources. And so in many ways, Bitcoin's already green. And in an interesting way, there's this Darwinian incentive to go out and find the cheapest energy, which is typically green. So I feel like in many ways, this will usher a super cycle of Bitcoin usage with renewable resources, will create more investment and more dynamics in renewables based on Bitcoin. It's got energy. The energy grid has a new customer, right? It's like, let's put some solar panels in a field in Iowa. Let's sell that back to the grid, and make a profit that way. Here, you get to rechannel it to a new customer, and I think that's going to usher a whole new dynamic in renewables.
Yeah, I agree. And I also think it's just not that expensive to offset, the carbon usage right now of crypto. I mean, we've pledged to it with FTX. And I think another thing worth noting is that this doesn't hit all assets equally. Right now, it hits Bitcoin and Ethereum and almost nothing else, because it really is specific to proof of work chains. And as ETH transitions to ETH 2.0, that's going to go way down. And so I think it sort of is just going to be Bitcoin that even has sort of the potential for that large impact.
Yeah. Yeah. And not to be a conspiracy theorist, but Elon Musk also sells solar panels and battery packs that you put on the side of your building, true. Which could be an interesting benefit for him, over the medium term. It'll be interesting to see that play out. But I always feel like the crypto fundamentals continue to show strength every single day. but the narratives kind of get wonky and need to get unpacked and deciphered better. I think that's been one of the issues of this industry, where, kind of being in it day in, day out, you're seeing it click in the right direction, despite these narratives, despite the kind of what the media gets wrong or right. And it's something that I think we're getting better at as an industry, but Bitcoin does not have a PR department. So it's Twitter, it's informing journalists, it's that dynamic. Yep. What are your thoughts on how you play through some of these dynamics? Because not doing it well could crush a market or could create an imprint that otherwise we wouldn't want. Completely agree. And there have been a lot of PR fiascos on the part of crypto before, and would sort of hope that hope those go down. I think they have been going down. I think the industry's been getting its act together a bit, but there's a long way to go. And I think the biggest piece of this is what the leaders in the industry are doing and saying. I think a lot of other people will follow that, and I think that there's just no upside to antagonizing regulators. There's sort of a lot of things like that have happened, and it's independent of what you think, it's a mistake. Yeah. So let's kind of kick off the main part of the discussion in terms of kind of where we are today and what things will look like in a couple of years, which in certain scales is not that far away from now. In crypto, it feels like a decade, saying in 2 years, what will things look like? And we're sitting here kind of in the beginning of June with the market value of all of crypto being about $1.5 trillion. The average daily volume is about 130 billion a day. So we're almost, while people say there's been a crypto crash and Bitcoin's in the low 30s, every time we kind of go through a cycle, it's kind of like 10x the last gully that we were in, but people still kind of focus on this crash or the gully. I think the fundamentals are strong, and we're in this amazing moment where retail institutions, companies, applications are all kind of finding a groove, which is interesting. But DeFi specifically is something that I know is an area you've been focused on and a big thought leader and investor in. We're sitting at a $60 billion market cap. And this is like a real money experiment. People are lending, borrowing, generating yield, and kind of going through all these new primitives in DeFi. And so, how do you look at DeFi today? You could look back over the shoulder on what happened back in August, September with Sushi, to kind of where we are today, to where's this going to go in a couple of years? Yeah, I mean, it's come some ways, I think, a fair bit in the last year. There's a long way left to go. I think that there is sort of proof of concept for some things in DeFi. I think you look at the borrowed lending protocols in particular. I think they're pretty cool. I think they're functional. I think they're useful. A lot of DeFi is just blocked on layer 1 blockchain speed right now. Like a lot of things you'd want to do on chain are just going to take, 50 TPS for a small program, and the entire Ethereum blockchain is 10. And so you just can't do them. So it's sort of one of the big blockers that the industry has to get through somehow is scaling. And then the other thing is just really making the UI and UX beautiful. And I think there hasn't been nearly enough work done on that on a lot of DeFi projects right now to make them sort of awkward to use, especially when you have to interface with a non-custodial wallet. And it's just, especially for first-time users, not a good experience. I think the last thing is regulation. Like there's a lot of clarity that's, probably going to come out at some point about, does a decentralized smart contract have like a duty to KYC users? What does that even mean? Like, there are some thorny questions there. Yeah, and one of the points you made about these non-custodial wallets. So when you think of the $60 billion in total value locked in the traditional sense, AUM that's sitting in these DeFi protocols, that for the most part, that's coming in through MetaMask, which is pretty incredible to think that it's going through something that most of my friends and neighbors have never heard of MetaMask, right? Yep. And so if you think of like DeFi and the spokes off of that wheel, MetaMask is one kind of blood vessel off of that. And then you're starting to see other people go. It's something we're doing at Vesper for our DeFi platform. We're trying to figure out ways in which we expand the surface area of users, whether that's a private fund that does 2 and 20 dynamic, a public fund like you see Grayscale and other companies trying to port users into a currency, because it's pretty hard. It's hard for me to tell my neighbor to get MetaMask today. That will change over time, and kind of other ways in which to engage in these things. And I still think we're in the early days of that, but that work and that line of sight of trying to bridge not only the kind of retail distributed MetaMask users to also kind of institutions and how they interact. And I think that's a big opportunity, but it's also, to your point about KYC ML, it's a thorny issue, right?
Yep. And we're going to have to see what happens there. But I mean, it's definitely going to be, it's going to need some work. And I think the biggest misconception inside of the industry is a lot of people will say that like DeFi is ready to take on the banks. That's not true. Like, it's like institutions, especially regulated ones, are going to have a lot of trouble using DeFi as it is right now. That's not to say that they're never going to use it. But there's a lot that has to be worked out before it can get there.
Yeah, and in thinking through some of the ways in which you could build bridges between institutions, kind of this traditional finance and decentralized finance. It's a hybrid, so you got this hybrid finance, hi-fi in between, in a way. And you see certain primitives out there that are saying, I will build a pool for you on my platform that is fully KYC'd, AML'd, and whitelisted. So you kind of get the best of that ecosystem or the plumbing, not as much of the kind of decentralized usage. But what do you think of these, basically these private pools or these private kind of primitives on these public chains?
Yeah, it's interesting. I kind of think that they defeat the purpose of DeFi, which doesn't mean they're bad. Like, they could be great. But I kind of think at some point, like, why are you using DeFi? Like, why aren't you just using CeFi? And if it's the yield you want, there are ways to bridge that into a fully centralized product. And I kind of think that's like, that's sort of the proximate answer until you get to the point where you actually can go natively to DeFi. And so I'm like a little bit bearish on the hybrid solutions for now. I think I just kind of think the easiest thing is probably just sticking with CeFi until you're ready for DeFi. Yeah,
and maybe there's I view that as training wheels for institutions to be able to engage in the this lending, borrowing, vending machine that's on Ethereum or Solana or whatever. It's long term, it's not really sustainable. But then you think of some other institutions building their own cooperatives. But I still think those are training wheels to, what's going to happen in the future. So totally agree. And then what else relative to Solana and Serum are you doing with kind of like, what is that going to look like in 2 years? You mentioned transactions per second, and Solana's got some market leadership in terms of its throughput. What else do you want to see around the corner with a kind of scaled protocol like that?
Yeah. So in addition to continuing to scale out, I think there are a bunch of things there, but I think basically the next step, I think, is building great products. And I think there's been proof of concept of like cool products. I don't think there's been yet a proof of great products. In DeFi, I think that's a big thing that's missing, is finding a product there and being like, wow, this is actually just way better than anything you find in CeFi. This is a great experience. I think right now it's not quite at that point. And so I think that's sort of the next thing, is to really start building out products that feel great to use, that feel complete, that don't feel like they're missing big pieces. And products that are just, if someone knows nothing about DeFi, doesn't even know it's DeFi, it's still a compelling product to them.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, because it's like the winner. We have a lot of great primitives with a lot of TVL, a lot of market value, generating lots of fees, and these, whether it's Compound or Uniswap, Sushi, etc. But to your point, if somebody creates a better UI, UX, a better veneer, and hides all the complexity, uses all of those vending machines in their kind of dashboard, that could be in many ways a DeFi winner. It's kind of like what CeFi did for crypto and kind of organize it, make it all kind of on one dashboard. That same experience can be translated to DeFi in a very profound way.
Yeah, totally agree.
And then let's shift gears a little bit here to the NFT world. You're launching an NFT exchange with FTX. Tell us about that, and maybe start with the premise on, to my surprise, NFTs, much like maybe last summer with DeFi, kind of went from 0 to 1 in many ways, just kind of accelerated, and this Cambrian explosion of innovation and kind of developers coming into DeFi. We saw that, towards the tail end of last year, early 2021, where creators, developers were going all into the NFT world. And it's now we're in a Cambrian explosion for NFTs, which is amazing to see. I would not have predicted that. I would have thought that would take a little longer to mature and get some of the kind of the rails organized to do that. But we're in NFT world full on right now. So how do you think about NFTs, and what are you doing to kind of capture some of that opportunity?
Oh yeah, I was also surprised at the uptake there quite a bit. We launched a platform for it, and I think what we've seen is just really large amounts of demand from customers, but even more so, businesses looking to partner on it. Tons and tons that are just really excited to find a platform to release NFTs based on what they've been up to. And at some point we just got such overwhelming integration demand that we went for it. And I think a piece of this also is that there are, I think, a lot of places where it makes sense, right? Like tickets should be NFTs. I think there are also places where it doesn't make sense, and I'm a little worried that too much of the space is sort of empty. And it's like this is literally just JPEG, and you're like, wonder how much people pay for this one, And so I am a little bit worried about some of it coming across like the 2017, 2018 ICO boom and crash.
Yeah. I mean, I see some of that too, like the JPEG example you gave. And then you look at how, markets are made and born, whether it's railroads, telephony, internet, crypto, and now NFTs. There's always going to be this, overspend, over imagination. And then it needs that to kind of get to this kind of center of gravity of what it is. But it's going in all sorts of directions. I think there's, the pragmatic of tickets and being able to resell those or kind of distribute those in a lot much easier fashion. To some of these kind of creator NFTs, and then ones that interact, like the NFTs that will show a different color if the price of Bitcoin is up or down, or these different interactions. And I think some of those that have that depth, that have that interaction, I think are going to expand art and technology in a pretty cool way.
Yeah, totally agree.
And maybe we could shift. So we talked about DeFi for a little bit, covered NFTs. You've covered a big swath of crypto kind of in your portfolio and kind of in your on your whiteboard, if you will. What are your thoughts on Web3? And so kind of look at Web3 as, taking Amazon Web Services and kind of stratifying those layers, whether it's compute, storage, DNS, VPN, you name it. And you have this like decentralized web stack that's forming literally in front of our eyes. And these digital cooperatives are coming together to say, I'm going to contribute storage. I'm going to get paid in this token. Somebody else wants storage. They'll pay in that native currency. And then pretty soon, much like in the DeFi space, folks are building orchestration engines, because to do one without the other doesn't make sense sometimes. And so we'll start seeing these, again, that UI UX that we talked about for DeFi being born in the Web3 world, where it's like, I need a full AWS web stack, but don't put me through the pain of provisioning each and every one. Give me something that will kind of collate that for me. But what are your thoughts on kind of Web3? I feel like it's a really keystone architecture and an infrastructure in this space for all the things that we have now to be resilient and distributed and uncensorable and all those kind of key tenets. We can't have that without Web3 kind of being in full force.
Yeah, I think it's super interesting. I think there's a lot of things that just naturally could go. I think social media is a good example. Like, it could totally be on Web3 and actually could make a lot of sense there. One thing I do think is that, like, it's worth it to think about what the constraints are on Web3. Like, what's DeFi good at? What's it bad at? You know, and what it's great at is composability, flexibility, customizability, and trust. Right? You can prove exactly what a program will do, and other people can compose with it naturally and natively as if it were just part of what they built. And so those are both super awesome. Some of the big downsides is it's just not extremely computationally efficient. You have to have, lots and lots of nodes computing everything. So, anything which has a huge AWS cost as a centralized business is going to have a much huger one as a decentralized one. And you can't get super low latency. If you have like a geographically decentralized consensus mechanism, it takes 100 milliseconds for light to travel around the world. And so you're never going to have latency less than about that tick by tick in any decentralized system. And so I think those two things provide some limits on it. And so for things that are extremely like computationally constrained or intensive, it's going to be hard to fit them in a decentralized stack. Whereas for things where there's lots of different pieces to the puzzle and having them able to interact with each other natively would be really valuable. I think it's a great fit.
Yeah, absolutely. How long before you think some of those, some of that infrastructure will be game ready? Is it a year, 3, 5? And I guess it depends on the.
It's a good question. Like, I think it could be 6 months if the world tried really hard. It's probably not going to happen. I think like 1 to 3 years, like roughly my guess. But really it is like, if the right 10 people sort of decided it was their top priority, it would happen a lot faster.
Do you think Amazon or Google Cloud or Azure at Microsoft will ever tokenize their resources and kind of back into this space?
I don't know about ever. I don't think it's happening anytime soon. I do think it might happen eventually, but it's not a perfect fit. Like, they can't decentralize their whole business because it's too computationally constrained. They could tokenize the payment for it and the distribution effects and things like that, sort of like what I think Akash is doing. And so I do think that, like, it, probably see one of them do it eventually. But I would be surprised if it were a short or medium term thing. Yeah.
I think it's got incredible promise, much like what's happening in DeFi, but it's going to take a little bit more time to get there. So I totally agree. Another theme I'd love to cover and get your thoughts on is security tokens. And it's kind of been around for a while. The T-Zeros, the Polymaths, Securitize. There's a lot of folks pushing towards that space and basically tokenizing a cap table and maybe having some other logic in there in terms of cash flows or IP, et cetera. But tokenizing ownership, I think, is an important piece of this equation, and fractionalizing it, and then all those pieces going through DeFi, right? There will be these chutes and ladders to say, I've got X shares of Apple stock. I need to borrow against that quickly to pay rent or do these things that are a lot more easier to accomplish than they are today. And I think it'll advance a lot of that usage and utility of assets when they're in this kind of tokenized basket. And so, but we haven't seen STOs go anywhere, quite frankly. There's been, I participated in the first STO with Blockchain Capital, and that was like kind of a one of one. Since then, there's not a lot of action there. There's not a lot of volume. And you kind of go back to the days of, Shares Post and Second Market. They build businesses basically trying to get investors early access, pre-IPO access to Twitter and Facebook and Zynga back in the day. And I view these STO platforms as trying to kind of do the same thing,
Yep.
but they're not doing it with a lot of well-known, unicorns, if you will. So it'd be interesting if a lot of these STO platforms did things with companies that we know versus, unknown companies that are still in their own right, super interesting. But doing a SpaceX or something that's private, super sought after, that's tokenized in an STO would be very interesting to kind of light the fire underneath the STO market.
I completely agree, and we have done some of that actually on FTX. So we had, for one day we had Airbnb as sort of a test case, which was super cool. We listed the day before the IPO. And then Coinbase we had months before the IPO or the direct listing. And we currently have Robinhood stock trading on FTX.com. It's been kind of cool to watch. And I think that there's super, super high upside in this space. I think, the sort of previous attempts at this, I think they're just missing too many pieces. Like they didn't have a product, like they didn't have the exchange yet. They didn't have an audience, didn't have a user base. They didn't have other draws to the platform. They didn't have like the on-ramps and off-ramps and everything else that goes into the product. They also didn't already have the equity to offer it. Like they had to separately arrange each one, which is a big pain point. And there wasn't sort of like there's a little bit of putting the cart before the horse, a little bit of saying, great, we have an SEO platform now. It's live. Everyone come trade. There's nothing to trade there. No one looking to trade anything there. And so I think it's a super cool idea, but you need to put a lot of pieces together to make it really take off. I think we've put most of the pieces together. I don't think we've put every piece together there. We're like getting liquidity on these things is not easy. But I think it'll get there. I think you just need to do it on a platform with enough of the pieces.
Yeah, it feels like we're getting closer and closer. Like, what happened with DeFi and NFTs in the last year. I would have thought something in the STO world would have improved and gotten to its mainstream moment, but we're still not there. It's got to your point, it's got all the right makings of a big market, liquidity coming in. But I think the people that are, on platforms today that are in crypto are really interested in crypto, and they're not, they don't want to buy Apple stock, on an exchange. I think that'll evolve and change over time. But I still think today they're kind of two separate worlds.
Yep.
And the user base just isn't, showing up. Like to go to a new platform and sign up because you want this one particular name, it's kind of hard and a lot of friction, and people kind of aren't there yet. I think once you incorporate it, kind of like what you're doing, that flywheel will start to turn, and I think good things will happen.
Yeah, I agree. It should happen.
Yeah. So you acquired Bloqfolio through FTX. What's on the horizon for Bloqfolio in terms of the mobile dynamics and just the overall kind of vision for that? I thought that was an amazing acquisition. It's great UI UX, amazing experience. What's next for Bloqfolio?
Yeah, and it's been great to see roll out. And the context was sort of the obvious one of like they built an amazing brand and user base and experience, but didn't have the tech or finance to offer trading and investing, and their users wanted it, and we had that back end. And so we acquired it last year, and a few months ago we rolled out investing in it. And I think sort of the dead obvious future, right? Of like, I think no one's going to be shocked at which product segment or which competitors or which market it's going after. I think a lot of the context is FTX. I think we build the best products in the space. We do not have the longest history or brand. We relate to the game. A lot of our competitors were live for 6 years before we turned on, had 20 million users before we had 20. And so, because of that, we've been looking for ways to get our product out there to a way larger group of people, and I think Bloqfolio is a key piece of that. And I think the product evolution, I don't know, like look at your favorite comparable product for it. I think you're going to pretty quickly come to some pretty reasonable conclusions about that.
No, I'd agree, and I thought that was a stroke of genius to get into that business and kind of expand that, because I think that target demographic of young people trying to invest and finding a platform to do that comfortably in a UI UX that resonates with them, I think is a big deal. And because some of this stuff is not, magic or hard computer science. It's just like, get the best user experience. If you can do stuff in 1 click versus 3, that will give you a huge advantage, because people are generally want all those kind of creature comforts when they're doing this stuff. So Sam, you've made a big imprint on Miami. It's been not only last week, but also in terms of sponsoring the arena where the Miami Heat plays. What was kind of your journey with that, and kind of what was the thinking there? I kind of go back to remembering 2014, where BitPay did they sponsored the Bitcoin Bowl. And it was, they didn't say BitPay, they said Bitcoin, because it was kind of like it's trying to get more energy towards Bitcoin. So how do you think about shaping a brand, shaping a narrative, getting people into crypto? Because I think that is a main stage, mass market way to engage. And it certainly was a pleasant surprise from the crypto community, and probably was, if people were scratching their heads that weren't in crypto, to say, who is FTX, which obviously was a stroke of genius to say, learn more, FTX.com.
Yeah, I'm super excited about it. I think it's a great partnering with the team, the city and the county and the league on that. I mean, being in a city that's excited about tech and crypto is great. And that made it so much more pleasant. But I think I spent a lot of time meditating on this. And, I think maybe do you happen to watch football at all? I don't know if you're...
Sure.
Sure.
Yeah.
So,
I guess when the Bears are playing, I'm from Chicago.
Right. So. Yeah. Now and then. I spent a lot of time thinking about how to build a brand, and I don't think I have all the answers, but I think there's some things that are sort of interesting. I think one of them is like, do you know what bed Dak Prescott sleeps on at night?
What bed? Who sleeps on?
Dak Prescott. So.
I do not.
Right. No one does. No one's known it. The interesting thing is that literally every football game over the last year has at least once had a commercial starring Dak Prescott talking about sleep number beds. But I've never...
Oh, sleep number. Yeah. Okay, I'm with you.
Right. No one's gotten that when I asked it, which is interesting because you kind of very naively think that would be like literally every football game in the last year has had that ad. And I think what happens is people don't have that much room in their mind to pay attention to branding or commercials. You can do something that seems completely reasonable and gets absolutely fuck all traction, like none at all ever. And then there are a few things that stick with you, right? Like everyone knows what Apple's slogan is, right? And everyone can say something about the commercials they've had. And there's a few brands that have done that. And I spent a lot of time trying to think about like what happened. Like, why is it that some of these stick and some of them don't? And I don't pretend to know all the answers here, but one thing that I came away with is there just aren't that many things that stick. And so if you're going to try and do it, you have to really, really shoot for that. Like, you can't just do something that seems like a good campaign. You have to have a reason why this is going to set itself apart. Like, this is going to be the thing people pay attention to. And I think there are a couple really cool things with with FTX Arena, as the Miami Heat Stadium is now named. One of them is that no one remembers Dak Prescott's commercial for sleeping over. Even though he's a great quarterback, he's a great guy. Like, it's sort of like, but actually, anyone who follows sports can name half of all the stadiums in American sports, right? You can name the name of all these fields. You can't name almost anything else about the sponsorships, but that one everyone knows. And there are lots of reasons for it, and it's just like every game. It's like, welcome to FTX Arena. Every announcer has to say it, right? It's written. It's all over the place in a way nothing else is about those games, right? It's unique, and it actually just gets massively more retention than any other sponsorship does in almost anything else in America. And so that's one big piece of this, is just like understanding those few things that people really pay attention to. And the other thing is, if there are a lot of companies you sponsor, whatever, an airline company, a razor company, and you sponsor an arena, and it just, I don't know, doesn't resonate with. It's not bad, but people are like, yeah, I know, whatever. It's, I've shaved before. I'll probably shave in the future. There are a lot of and the cool thing about us is like we sponsor, and people are like, whoa, what is that? And they're like, oh, it's a crypto thing. Yeah, I kind of thought maybe I'd do something there. I don't know, maybe I'll think about it. It's like, it's just different enough, and that it sort of catches people a little bit. And it's actually a thing a lot of people have been thinking about, meaning to get into, but haven't pulled the trigger on. And it's not like, oh, maybe I'll start shaving. Yeah. Right. No, I mean, if you're more older than 15, you've already had that moment. So, so I think it's sort of a combination of those two things that led to it.
Yeah. And it helps that you're in this very crypto-centric town of Miami, which is kind of cool to see the mayor, the real deal, kind of doing deals and adding energy and sunlight and water to anybody showing up that's reasonable, that wants to build in that city. And I think that's, to me, that is, almost on the same kind of caliber as El Salvador in certain derivative ways, because the impact that's going to create in the kind of county and the city, et cetera, surrounding Miami is going to be, we'll be reflecting upon that decades from now. I think it's going to be at that level. Totally agree. So last kind of area I want to cover with you is philanthropy. And, I mentioned earlier the crypto market cap is now at $1.5 trillion, and we're still in the early kind of innings of this ball game, and I kind of feel like we're in the mid to late 90s of internet in terms of where we are with crypto, and so what that is going to the spillover effects of that is going to create resources for people to do stuff, whether it's sponsor scholarships, help people. There's a lot of impact that could be created from the resources that are, do advocacy, you name it. But the resources are going to be there, much like in early industries, whether it was like the oil industry 100 years ago or whatever. These resources are going to fund libraries, do stuff. I guess nobody's funding libraries today, but a virtual metaverse library, let's call it that. So philanthropy, I think, is a really important piece, but what I don't like is where you're giving crypto to a philanthropy, they melt that into fiat and they give that to a cause, which is a fantastic impact. But I think it doesn't really exercise some of the dynamics of crypto, because I think there's a double kind of benefit if it's done in that way. Meaning, so I've been on the board of BitGive for 6 years, the first crypto charity in the space. And one thing that we've been building is something called GiveTrack, which is, fundamentally, if you can see your money going in and you could track and trace the hammer, the nails, the wood, and then the schoolhouse being built, and you have better fidelity on that supply chain. And again, some of those things could be disrupted, but if you have better insights and accountability in that, I think you wind up giving more, right? If you have this tracking and tracing system that's super transparent, and but again, that uses blockchain technology in a way where it kind of takes away this. 95% of the money that comes in goes to the cause. And you really don't know about the 5% or the 12%, or is it efficient? If it's not efficient, you really don't know. But what are your thoughts on that? If you have better transparency, you wind up kind of sort of wanting to give more if you think it's going to work better, right?
I definitely think that's true. And I think that getting accountability for charities is absolutely massive. I think it's tricky because it's not just money in, money out that matters. Like, part of the problem is that some of the efficiency gains aren't from like guzzling funds into stupid shit. It's just from doing a less efficient version of an activity. And so you're still spending all the funds on it. It's just like you're not having the impact you could be. So I don't think that the funding part solves all of it, but I do think it solves a piece of it. And I do think that being able to trace that through would be really cool. And we're trying to build something out there with FTX Foundation. We're giving away a bunch of money. I've been really grateful for users as well. We've pledged over 6 million through it. And we're also working on FTX Pay, which is a payment service provider widget we just built, on having a dedicated portal for charities so that they can use it to accept both fiat and crypto donations, keep track of everything cleanly, for tax purposes, have all the records that they need, and for receipts for customers, and be able to convert when they need to convert, and I'm pretty excited about that as well.
That's super exciting. It's the first I've heard of it, so that's awesome where you're going. The other piece I was thinking about in the DeFi world, in order to exercise philanthropy on DeFi, I think there's a cool value proposition where you could say, I'm building this pool, and the pool is, you deposit ETH or your favorite crypto and you earn more crypto. And for donors, you could donate, and all you're donating is the yield off of that crypto. And I think directing and kind of programming that yield to a charity could be very powerful. And so people that are hodlers that have crypto sitting idle, you could pool it in the cooperative, put it through kind of a DeFi yield kind of farming component, and then distribute that yield. And I think that's kind of like I don't want to say it's a half step, but it's an easy way for somebody to get to yes, to say, I want to participate. They get to keep their underlying, but they get to direct their yield to a charity. And I think that's at least a cool baby step primitive that could be exercised further. What are your thoughts on that?
I completely agree. And I completely agree that it's just like huge to have a simple, quick user experience there. And anything that you can do to make that smooth for users, makes them give away and makes them have the impact they're trying to have on the world. And just removing activation energy is huge. Yeah,
it's something that we're looking to build something like that on Vesper. So I'll definitely circle back with you once that is further along. But it's like we're creating these treadmills for crypto at Vesper, where you deposit something and earn something. I think is very strong. I think that could be definitely ported towards philanthropy or other causes where you could again direct your yield, which is kind of a cool programmatically direct your yield, cool new primitive.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think we're at time here. So I just wanted to say thanks, Sam, for sharing your thoughts. And again, great seeing you in Miami. Thank you for making the imprint on Miami and crypto that you've made over the last couple of years. It's been profound to watch, and we're all looking forward to seeing what's ahead for you guys.
Well, thank you.